Spectrobes was Disney's wild card into the gaming world. Granted, Disney at this point had a couple games out, but nothing of this variety. A monster collecting game born out of corporate ambition. Yes, Disney, the House of Mouse, thought it could go toe-to-toe with Pokemon of all people. And for a minute, it honestly looked like they could have pulled it off. But why did a game that could have potentially rivaled Pokemon, give it enough time, disappear without a word? By the end of this video, I'll tell you why Spectrobes wasn't a failure, even if it never got a fourth game. So, I'm Remy, and I just want to ask, has anyone checked on Spectrobes? And if not, let's. The origin of Spectrobes. In hindsight, Disney making a monster collecting game sounds a bit weird, right? But in the early to mid 2000s, Disney Interactive needed a hit, so they teamed up with Jupiter, a well-known Japanese developer with some pretty big names under their belt. For example, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. And I don't know if you lived under a rock for the last 20 plus years, but Disney and anything Kingdom Hearts, when they link up, they kind of make a banger, if we don't count Kingdom Hearts 3. But they kind of make bangers. Together, they cooked up Spectrobes for the Nintendo DS. It was Disney's first attempt to create an original IP aimed at gamers, and not moviegoers for once. Their goal? To capture the same lightning in a bottle Pokemon had. Or I guess maybe I should say a Pokeball. And maybe sell a few toys while they're doing it, because you know, merchandise baby, that's money right there. What they created was ambitious, but ambition always doesn't guarantee success, especially when factors outside of your control shoot down that ambition. So let's talk about the overall premise in the world building in the world of Spectrobes. So you play as Roland for majority of the game, and later down in the franchise you'll play as Gina, his partner. Two intergalactic police officers, or just space cops. As for their mission, it's to stop the Crawl, a species of space nightmares from devouring entire planets. How do you fight them? With necromancy, silly. Come on now, obviously it's necromancy. You awaken ancient creatures called Spectrobes, you excavate them, yell at them, and then wake them up and make them fight eternally. Necromancy. Yes, Disney's monster game had a fossil digging mechanic. It was a sci-fi meets archaeology with a sprinkle of ancient mythology. And if that premise sounds familiar, it's because it sounds like Dinosaur King. Ironically enough, Dinosaur King came out the same year as Spectrobes. I can only imagine the dev king for Spectrobes was just punching air the moment they saw that announcement. I'm like, how did we even do that? Did somebody leak something? Guys, come on, give me some answers. Hilarious circumstances aside, the universe felt expansive and open enough for anyone to jump into the franchise wanting to learn more about the lore. And we'll definitely get into the lore later. For right now though, let's talk about the thing people love the most, the gameplay mechanics. Now here's where things get kind of interesting. Spectrobes didn't copy Pokemon. Instead, it leaned heavily into the DS software. Like it was designed in a Nintendo lab for specifically the DS, which it probably was. You dig up fossils with a touchscreen. You can even blow off the fossils while excavating them. There's even mechanics for the player to yell at the fossil to finish the awakening so they would start fighting for them. Like, that's so cool. Who thinks of stuff like this, man? Such an interesting idea. In a way, all these mechanics were slightly satisfying. After you did all the prerequisites to awaken the Spectrobes, they'd fight with you in real-time battles. So think more like Digimon World games when it comes to battle mechanics, rather than turn-based found in traditional Pokemon game. I'm sure the dev team wanted to stay clear of any quote-unquote "this is just a Pokemon ripoff" accusations, and they decided to go for something a bit more non-traditional in creature collecting battling game. In a roundabout way, Spectrobes avoided a Power World situation before Power World was even a thing. And I know we don't gotta go there. Power World did rip off obviously certain elements of Pokemon, but in its own way, it's relatively unique. At the end of the day, there are no guns in Pokemon, so you know, there's definitely that line drawn there. So here's a hard truth also. The combat just wasn't perfect. It could feel clunky, like really clunky at times. Maybe it was because the DS was pushing itself to its limits rendering them graphics, or maybe it was because spaghetti code, I'm not sure. But I do know my DS would chug sometimes before fights and after fights. And as a child, I kept thinking it was me and that I was overheating my DS by charging it overnight. But honestly, I'm thinking it was the game and not me overcharging my DS like I thought. All these factors, good and bad, regardless of the nature of the gameplay or the chaotic story to this point, it was unique enough to stand out. For better or for worse, Spectrobes had its own identity, as long as we keep ignoring Dinosaur King. Y'all remember Dinosaur King? That theme song kinda slapped.
Anymore, see 'em fight, hero war, watch out cause they're right next door. The past is in the present, time's been twisted upside down. These fossils are colossal, only one can wear the crown. Dinosaur King is what you wanna be, yeah.
And since we're on the topic of what makes Spectrobes truly unique, let's talk about its monsters and designs, because those right there, them the real standouts, I'm not gonna lie to you. And let's be honest, while Spectrobe had a male and female lead characters, the Spectrobes themselves were the star of the show, like any good monster collector game. Each one had 3 forms: child, adult, and evolved, and they all looked, honestly, pretty wild. Imagine Pokemon, but with a futuristic, almost mechanical twist. Stop it, I know you're thinking Digimon, but it wasn't Digimon, it was more like biomechanic. That still sounds like Digimon. Look, I'm gonna show some pictures, you're gonna get what I mean. The art director for Spectrobes was Koji Kitayama. He's also done work on games like The World Ends With You, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memory, obviously, and Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire. So if you grew up in the early 2000s and just happen to like anime and Pokemon, you have definitely seen his work before. Seemingly, his design philosophy tends to lean more towards sleek and cool design, which leads his artwork and design work to kind of go into 2 camps, either really sleek and cool or too overly designed and kind of edgy, like a fish with a sword for a face. Now, thankfully, nothing as edgy as Digimon, because Digimon has some edge to it. But some designs just sort of felt like, oh, how cool is my 3rd phase? Me personally, my favorite Spectrum was Spiky, and it was a stage 2, and it was sick. And unfortunately, I evolved into his 3rd stage, and he just became a bulky green Zod from Berserk, which sounds cool on paper, but me did not like. So me did not use after that, and it was sad. The Mons went from, you thought I was gonna say cute or cool from my 1st to 2nd form, but the joke's on you, now I have a sword face and I'm gonna fight in-universe God because I can. Also, there were Dark Spectrobes. I feel like I kind of have to talk about them even if they aren't anything crazy cool when it comes to design-wise. They were pretty much just evil Spectrobes, quote-unquote, which are just regular Spectrobes, but their bodies were either black or purple with a secondary color to highlight their darker bodies, which, I mean, were cool, but like, you know, nothing crazy. So yeah, Dark Spectrobes, they were a thing. Okay, now that I've said everything I wanted to say about the cool monsters, let's talk about, I guess, the main characters' designs and stuff while I'm here. Roland and Gina were, I guess, sort of cool. They look like the kind of protagonists you'd find in a Saturday morning cartoon, with bright hair, heroic poses, and, you know, one-liners and generic catchphrases and dumb jokes, stuff of that nature. Now, as for the designs, they were a bit unique. Roland definitely had the most bland out of the 2 designs, with his uniform consisting of gray, white, and silver. And that's it, which is honestly pretty unique for a Saturday morning cartoon kind of character, or even a main character in general. Traditionally, you want the main character to stand out, to leave an impression on a player or a viewer or anybody in that position of viewing the media. He doesn't leave an impression. He's more like just kind of there. And honestly, I think that might have been the point. My assumption is that during battle, they didn't want him to stand out too much compared to the Spectrobes when they were fighting. So I think it was more of a conscious decision to have him look so bland comparatively to the Spectrobes. I personally am not the biggest fan, if that's the reason, because I'd still want to look at the main character and think, man, that guy looks sick. He does not look sick. He looks kind of boring. And now for the Crawl. They were dark, menacing, and genuinely kind of creepy. If the Spectrobes were the light, the Crawls would be like that weird perfect shadow. And on a side note, and maybe this was just a me thing, but whenever I saw the Crawl, I got major heartless / nobody feelings from them. And obviously because of the series art director, there's going to be overlaps in designs, but it bugged me. It bugged me so much when I was younger. I'm like, this looks like a Heartless that didn't make it into Kingdom Hearts. How did that happen? And obviously as a kid, I wasn't looking up art directors, but you know, it just always bugged me. Now I know though. When it comes to the designs for the High Crawl, that's a bit different. The designs are honestly a bit more cool, more humanoid, just honestly solid designs overall. They also had a really solid theme when you fight them. Like, it was kind of a banger. It gave the fight the energy it needed to feel somewhat serious, but not overly heavily musically intense during the fight. Little nice steps like this is how Disney wanted to appeal to kids. And it worked. Disney got them. Disney got a lot of them, actually, around 1 million for the first game. Now that we've laid down the foundation, let's actually talk about the games. Game number 1, Spectrobes, 2007. While it wasn't a runaway hit, it sold over 1 million copies, and honestly, sorta left critics divided. Some loved the innovation, others hated the grindy gameplay and shallow story. And obviously, the Pokemon comparisons would not stop during reviews of the game. And as a person who at one point actually owned the game, I have to agree with Metacritic for once, and I hate that. In hindsight, the game honestly felt average, not bad, but definitely not amazing. Even so, as a first game, it was interesting enough for me to keep wanting to play the franchise. It was also enough for Disney to justify a sequel, so Disney kept putting in money. So in 2008, we got Spectrobes, Beyond the Portals. Disney wasted no time with this one. They improved everything. Better combat, a deeper story, not very deep, but a deep enough story, and even multiplayer. Yes, you could even battle your friends. Not me though, I was at the point in my life where it wasn't cool to play anything that wasn't 2K, FIFA, Madden, or any Call of Duty game, so I never told my friends I played it, so a missed opportunity on my part. And with all these new improvements and features, you would think this would be the perfect Spectrobes game, but it honestly wasn't. And obviously, it's only been a year between this and the last game, and even the producer of the series, Kentaro Hisei, said they made great strides moving forward. It was noticeable that it clearly wasn't enough strides in 1 year to warrant a sequel to some extent. That to say, seemingly, Spectrobes found its footing. It found a ground where it could work with and potentially grow into a monster of a franchise. And luckily enough, I wasn't the only one who thought this. And once again, I don't like saying this, I have to agree with Metacritic. People were honestly liking Spectrobes too, and it deserved all the praise it got. To be fair though, the game did not sell that well in Japan, but apparently that was expected. So, Disney's overall plan was to relaunch the franchise in Japan, to give it an origin so to speak. So let's get into the third and final game, Spectrobes Origin 2009. Spectrobes Origin came out on the Wii. This game was a massive departure from the DS titles. Gone were the days of touchscreen mechanics when it comes to Spectrobes. You could no longer yell at your Spectrobes to wake up anymore. We're losing recipes. And in their place, full 3D action RPG. In most cases, when games depart so much from the formula they established in previous games, the fans, within reason, tend to not be the most receptive to the changes, and yet somehow, Origins was the outlier, which is really cool to see. And once again, I don't know why, I keep agreeing with Metacritic, they gave Spectrobes Origin a good review, and it deserved it apparently. Unfortunately, at the time, while I did have a Wii, I did not buy the game because I was broke middle school kid with no money, and this was not coming from my parents, so it just didn't happen. However, it looked gorgeous, ambitious, and honestly really fun. And as a fan, it makes sense that you would think that the features of Spectrobes was secure because of this. But unfortunately, events outside of Spectrobes' control would lead to this being the last game in the franchise. So before we get into why the game died at least, let's actually talk about the game's story now. Okay, white screen time. Let's talk about the 3 Spectrobes game stories summarized very quickly because I don't want to edit very much. Spectrobes 1. Space cop Roland and Jenna stumble upon an ancient escape pod. They save Aldous, an old man who was frozen, and has a crazy story about planet-eating aliens or monsters called the Crawl, so, you know. He's got that. And naturally, our favorite space cop duos team up with him to save the galaxy. Because what else do you do when a guy frozen in a cryopod tells you need to save the universe? You naturally accept. And honestly, he gave me monsters to fight with, so on a fundamental level, I kinda get it. So after punching Crawl from across 5 planets, their boss drops a bomb that the real bad guys are chilling at this whole other place called Mido. And conveniently, it's a planet your ship can't even reach. Thankfully, the old man remembers, oh yeah, there's an ancient spaceship just lying around somewhere. And if you go for a treasure hunt and you get these sacred relics, you can, build the spaceship again and go to the planet. So they do that. They have their grand old interplanetary treasure hunt and they get all the keystones to bring the ship to life. And they go to the planet to fight the big bad. You get to the planet, you do all the prerequisites to fight the big boss. You fight the big boss. Day saved. Hooray! Yay! Everyone's happy. Happy ending. Old man planet's revenge or whatever. I don't know. And Spectrobes 1. Fun game. Not the best story, but fun game regardless. Spectrobes 2 Beyond the Portals. Our favorite buddy cop duo is back once again, still on the high from saving the galaxy from the Crawl swarm, but their piece is short-lived because naturally the universe loves drama. And once again, Roland's an MC, even if he doesn't know it, he is an MC. The old man of the group gets kidnapped by a high Crawl named Maja. And just to make things worse, random space portals start popping up everywhere because cosmic plot holes, I guess. Letting Crawl flood into their dimension from other space or something. Honestly, it's sort of nebulous, but that's neither here nor there. Now our MC, armed with brand new Spectrobes, new equipment, and their edgy little cousins, Dark Spectrobes, ooh. Roland and Gina set off on another galaxy-wide road trip. Their mission? Rescue the old man, smack down Maja, and take out the whole new high Crawl bosses before their home universe becomes a Crawl-infested summer home. And that is the spark notes for Spectrobes 2. Now on to Spectrobes Origin. Once again, the Crawl are back at it. Again, they have no other enemies in this universe. And in the third game, the Crawl are leveling planets like they're playing intergalactic Jenga, so that's kinda interesting. The commander of the space cops order our dynamic duo, Roland and Gina, once again to deal with this Crawl problem because there are no other officers in Space Cop force. I don't know. They have no help. So they go to investigate the issue. But to no one's surprise, something unexpected happens. They get sucked into a wormhole and wake up in a whole new star system. And as usual, the duo gets wrapped up in some weird scavenger hunt to stop evil forces from taking over the Spectrobes and the planet, or whatever. Can't take those two anywhere without problems, man. They need to find the shards of a king to resurrect the legendary Beast King and save the planet they're currently on. Along the way, they run into their boss's Grant's old frenemies. Crux, he's back. Again. And this time, he wants to be super evil and destroy the universe or something again, like in the last game, but this time, even more evil. And our favorite duo can't let him do that, so they collect the shards and summon a superpowered Spectrobe to beat him. Anyway, they wreck his plans, throw him into a giant evil energy spear, whatever, and quote-unquote save the day. But it turns out he didn't die. Surprisingly, that was the cliffhanger for the next game. But it turns out that even he didn't know this. He would actually die because his franchise ended with that game. So the good guys actually won in a way. So that is the story of Spectrobes, a fun monster cop story. Nothing crazy, but enjoyable nonetheless. And one part of the story I didn't really talk about was the music and how it enhances certain moments. If you've never heard the Spectrobes soundtrack, honestly, I think you're missing out. It was cinematic, atmospheric, and downright epic in places. The battle themes had energy. Exploration tracks had a mystery to them, and the opening music, kinda magical, not gonna lie to you. It's a shame that the music didn't get more recognition. It was easily one of the franchise's most underrated elements in my opinion. And as Disney does best, Disney didn't just stop at the games. They rolled out unique merch, comic books, regular books, even some cards for Spectrobes. Unfortunately, none of it really took off. On the other hand, Spectrobes had a cool 14-episode 3D animated YouTube series just going over the game and some cool plot points. Definitely a unique take to marketing for this game in my opinion. All things considered, there could have even potentially been an anime in the works, or at least in the talkings, but we'll never know considering what happened to the game. And as for the merch the show actually did get besides the books, it was lackluster to say the least. They had keychains, shirts, and specialty DSs made, but nothing crazy. You would think they'd have plush toys because every creature collector game has a weird plushie of their mascot. But Spectrobes never got it. Also, their mascot wasn't that cute in hindsight, so yeah, I kind of get why they didn't have one. But still, you'd think they'd have one made regardless. Even with the lack of quality merch, for a brief moment, Spectrobes had a dedicated fan base. It was the 6th best-selling DS game when it originally dropped in 2007. Online forums buzzed with tips, fan arts, and theories. But as the game faded from public consciousness, so did the community. Now it's mostly nostalgia keeping the fandom alive. Okay, now we can get to the fun part. So what went wrong? Spectrobes launched at a time when the monster collecting genre wasn't that crowded, so it had the perfect window to establish itself. And it did. And it was growing. Spectrobes died from nothing it did. It was actually a victim. A victim of Disney Infinity. Anybody remember that game? Yeah, I just scratched like the back of your mind for that one. It was Disney's answer to Skylanders because Skylanders needed someone to respond back for some reason. Once again, no one asked for this, but I'm sure Disney saw the potential in double dipping into the toys and video game market and they greenlit the game. And that leads to Disney Interactive struggling financially, then shutting down after the failure of Infinity, which indirectly causes Spectro to be quietly shelved by 2010, ending the franchise. We got shot in the crosshairs for no reason. Such a dumb way to go down. Spectrobes wasn't just a Pokemon clone, it was actually a Dinosaur King one. I'm sorry, that's just so funny. They came out the exact same year, man. Spectrobes had its own identity. Despite its flaws, Spectrobes left a mark. Its mechanics inspired elements in other games, and for fans, it was a reminder that failed franchises can still have value. Even though Spectrobes didn't actually fail, but you get what I'm saying. So here's the question. Could Spectrobes work today? With indie games thriving and nostalgia at an all-time high, a reboot, I believe, isn't impossible. Fans still talk about the series, so maybe if Disney listened and gave the people what they wanted. Not to mention, as the time of this recording, the Switch 2 was just announced a couple days ago. This could be the perfect time for a revival. Not to mention, people are kind of tired of Pokemon looking like garbage. So, this could be the time. Just saying. Imagine Spectrobes with modern graphics, online co-op, and open world exploration. It could be a hit, honestly. Spectrobes was ambitious, flawed, and honestly unforgettable. It may not have reached the heights Disney hoped for, but it's proof that even short-lived franchises can leave a legacy. And if it had been given the right amount of time to grow, we could still be talking about Spectrobes today over Power World, just saying, you know? So what do you think? Could Spectrobes make a comeback? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe and all that other fun stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Take it easy. Bye.